Today's session, we're going to be talking about reimagining assessments with Mark Sullivan, and just a little bit about Mark before we get going. Mark is a teaching faculty member and EAP instructor in the English Language Academy. Mark holds an MA in TESOL, what stands?
It's just TESOL, Teaching English as a Second Language.
Cool, thank you. From Monterey Institute, now Middlebury in Monterey, California. And he has a BA in International Relations from the College of William and Mary. Mark first started teaching English as a Peace Corps volunteer in El Salvador. And from that experience, he's been teaching ever since in the US and abroad. In addition to teaching, Mark has a background in teacher training, including as an English teacher trainer at TEFL International in Costa Rica, and has served as an English language fellow in Casablanca, Morocco, where he trained Moroccans going on to teach English in public schools. And Mark joins us today to discuss reimagining assessments, how AI can improve low-stakes assessment and boost student learning. Welcome, Mark.
Thank you, Lane. Hello, everyone. That was a nice introduction. It's nice to hear about myself.
You sound good.
I feel really nervous. It's like, oh, all that stuff, all that cool stuff I did before. Now I'm doing just this stuff. Anyway, thank you, Lane. And nice to see everyone in person, though I imagine there's people online too. Hello, online people.
Hey, Mark, let me turn that off.
Yes, sorry for it.
Sorry.
So I can't take credit for this title. I think Lane mostly came up with it. I think mine was, developing quizzes online or something like that. So this is a really good title, but I think it is important that, the title indicates what we're talking about here. So definitely low stakes quizzes. These are things that are not going to make or break students. They're not going to fail the course with these quizzes. But the idea is to increase engagement and hopefully boost student learning. So Lane already gave a background of this, but right now at UWM, I do teach in the EAP program. So writing classes, but the basic writing classes, like fundamental writing skills. Yeah, go for it. Thanks. So thanks. I don't have to do anything. So in the class, there's multilingual learners, so they are developing their English skills, but they need to develop their writing skills too. And there's a lot of reading in the class, so definitely a need to assess their reading skills, what they're understanding. So I think that's mostly the reason why I've had a need to develop these quizzes, was because they're doing a lot of outside reading and sometimes they don't do them. And so how to hold them accountable. The pre-established curriculum already had quizzes, but since we have so much technology, especially AI, I thought, oh, why can't I use this and maybe make some more quizzes that are low stakes? So I thought that was a good solution, and it was a good way to experiment with AI. In our program, we actually don't allow students to use AI because it's a developmental writing class. And so, we don't want them using it in their writing. But for our purposes, I felt like it was a good solution. Okay, so this is the problem. So students not doing the readings, that's common, I think, in most classes. Sometimes they'll come to the discussion and the good students, sorry to say the good students, but we're in a circle of trust here. The good students are doing the readings and some of them just are not when you ask those questions, like what is the reading about? So it felt like they were just unprepared for the classroom discussions. And also, since we're a writing class where they have to use the readings in their writing, there's also just reduced reading skills, especially post-pandemic. So how do I get them to understand and interact with the readings more so they can actually do better on their writing assignments? So the first thing, I think of when I, this picture, accountability. So they need a reason to do the reading. So using these low stakes quizzes will at least I was talking with Lane about this. We can't always monitor whether they're doing the whole reading, but at least we could get them to interact with the reading in some fashion. So if they have to take a quiz, even if they're not doing the full thing, they'll at least have to scan and look at it, and maybe it will interest them. So that's kind of the idea. In terms of accountability too, it is graded. These quizzes are, the ones that I'm creating are mostly multiple choice. So there's a lot of work at the front end, but no work at the back end. So it's like you develop the quiz and then they just do it on Canvas. So I think it is tied to a course grade, but it's a low percentage. I think in our class, it's 10 or 15%, and it's with like that attendance, homework, engagement grade. So really, if the quiz is out of 5 and they get a 1, they're not going to fail the course. And that'll hopefully make them, prepare better for the next quiz. Another thing, the problem from the teacher angle is that we have busy semesters. So when I start a semester, we do have pre-existing quizzes, but some of them either are really long, and how do you do it in class? There's no time in class. It could take 30 minutes, it could take an hour. So I think it just takes time as teachers to build these quizzes. So it's like, why not take advantage of AI to make things go quicker? Also grading them. So if you give one in class, then you have to take it home, get out a pen and grade it, which can take time. If it's multiple choice, maybe not that much time, but if you have like 30 students or 40 students, that's a lot. So if you build the quiz at the start, then you don't even have to grade at the end. However, I would say, and I'll show it to you in a few minutes, that it does take a little bit of effort and time to actually build that Canvas quiz. Okay, and another concern is, do we make it in class or online? I've found that I save time if I just take the time to build it before, and then it's on Canvas, and then it saves me time later because I don't have to worry about the grading. However, I do have to worry about questions, like that was a hard question, that was an unfair question, this answer could be right. So that's sort of mitigating the impact of a quiz that wasn't perfect. However, I think those issues can be resolved pretty quickly as compared to like having to go home and grade a bunch, like a stack of papers. Okay, so because of that, this is why I started experimenting with the AI, which if you've used it before, it's really just inputting a question and seeing what it produces. And thinking about this presentation, I didn't think of the word hallucination, but I heard it yesterday on AI that it still does hallucinate, and it still does give questions and possible answers that may or may not be correct. So I think it is important for a teacher to monitor that and make changes as necessary with what we know about developing quizzes. So really just started typing in random questions, develop a quiz, write a quiz, create a quiz, and the verb you use creates a different quiz, which is really weird. And it sounds like some of you already have this experience. I'm like, okay, I'm not the only one. And I'll show you some other ones that I just threw in there. Okay, and we were talking at the start with Lane and Brian that the title read like hesitantly. And that's why I put this word skeptical. And like I was kind of skeptical to type in a question and create a quiz because I generally feel like I can create a better quiz than AI. However, over the past year, I've realized that it's improved and it's getting better. Like last year I would do it and the quiz was worse. And this year I'm like, oh, this is like a little bit better. So it's making me feel better this semester, at least. Okay, so benefits, results from the teachers. We have to think about how it benefits teachers, but also the classroom too. And I don't think that's selfish. I just think we have to worry about our workload and our quality of life during the semesters. I think I did start to create more quizzes, more regular ones. So instead of like 4 quizzes at the start in the semester, and I would normally do those for the first half and then just get so busy with work that I would stop. And this has helped me create more going all the way up until like December. Just because I think it's kind of fun to experiment with AI a little bit. So I think it encouraged me to develop more. I think it freed up more time for me to lesson plan and grade. Instead of taking so much time to develop it on my own, having AI create like a first rough draft not only made it fun for me to develop, but I think it reduced my planning time so I could focus on my lessons a little bit more. However, as I know, developing it from scratch can be time consuming if you have a blank piece of paper and you gotta write a quiz. And from my angle, I thought that it was just a good check to do these to see who is and who isn't doing the reading. And if you go to the quiz function, you can see not just their scores, but you can also see which items they got correct, which ones they didn't. So the only thing I would say is if they're taking it at home, they could be using AI themselves, or they could be finding the answers online. I'm not monitoring it. So the struggling students could get a 5 out of 5, and a good student could get a 3 out of 5, but they did the reading. So there is no real way to assess that apart from using things like Proctorio, which, at this point, I just don't use right now. Okay. So I also felt better making more because I felt like a better teacher. And I think that's important. In the semesters before, I felt like I gave up doing the quizzes, but now I feel like, I felt better in general. Okay, and I already mentioned this. I felt like starting with the AI, it made me have more fun with creating the quizzes. So before I saw it as like a chore, but now I'll just go to AI, input the question, and then it created kind of a fun experience because I was able to it was like talking to another teacher or something and like, no, this isn't good. This is, so I felt like it was more interactive. For students, this is probably the most important parts of our job. I thought this has been the most interesting. They talk about the quizzes more and I call it discussion of or about. So discussion about, like, we have a quiz tonight. What's it about? Like I hear this before class and after class, or that quiz was hard. And that's good feedback for me, but they're also telling it to the other classmates. And they talk about what grade they got on it, which I've just noticed there's just more interaction, which means a little bit more engagement in the course. This was, I think, the students who either aren't attending class or not doing well in the class, I think it's helped them be more engaged because sometimes these students in our class won't do the difficult assignments like write an essay or integrate readings into their writing assignments, but they will do the quizzes because they know it's a quick, easy grade. So I found that they participate more. So if they don't come to class, they'll take the quiz. And even if they don't do well, at least they did something. So I think it's a good opportunity for them to improve their grade, even if they're not doing the most important parts of the course. Okay, this is still definitely unclear. Is it improving their skills, their reading and writing skills? And is it creating more engaging discussions? Like, I just don't really know. I think it depends if you give the quiz before the discussion versus after. It's tough to do it before because of time, but I do think it might be better to have it before, and then maybe they did something with the reading and it could create a better in-class discussion. But I don't know if it's like improving learning outcomes. I think you'd have to collect more data to see if that's the case. That's just difficult to monitor. Okay, so this is what I did. So this is when I'll go through just what I did. Before we do that, do we want to open it up to questions just because that was a lot of information, or should I just keep going?
No, it's up to you.
Okay,
Yeah.
that was the start of the presentation. That was the background.
Then you wanted to talk a little bit more about what you did.
Yeah, this is what I did.
Well, if there are
So-
questions, please, I'm happy to.
This is what I want to hear. I'm kind of curious to know,
Yeah.
did you give it the readings or did you give it a question that you informed from the readings? And my sort of underlying question there is how much time do you really save as a result?
Yeah, that is a
I'm
good
just
question.
looking for the leverage.
You know, and it's probably a little ambiguous in terms of the time saving. However, I think if you're having fun creating it, time goes by quicker. That sounds really philosophical. Okay, so for me, and for my classes, I just did it with the actual readings. And these were some examples of questions that I would input. So they actually have to do this reading this week. And so right now I'm developing a quiz. And if we have time today, I might start doing one while we're doing a little activity. So develop a short multiple choice quiz for this article right here. And more often than not, I've found that the AI or the internet does know something about the article in question. And I think it's good to experiment with different questions. So write a short college level quiz. If you write college level, it makes it more difficult and more deeper level understanding. I don't like these for Canvas. I would prefer those for in-class discussion. Some other ones, we have to test their vocabulary. So I've been doing what is a difficult vocabulary word from the article that you think they wouldn't know. And then I create a vocabulary question. So let's do a little example. Here we go. Okay, and I should zoom in here, right? So if we're actually creating the quiz, this is literally the first thing I do. So input the question. Sounds pretty basic, but that's what you do. And after that, this is when it gets a little tricky, I think. So as a teacher, we have to look at these questions and figure out, are they good questions or not? And are they assessing the actual reading? So taking a look at them, you know, and honestly, for today, I don't know if I have time to kind of go through like my normal teacher process of like selecting the best ones. But if we're looking at the actual quiz, you know, it does give an answer key. And the first thing I do is I look at the question and I look at the answer key and see if it's correct by checking the reading. So if we're going, let's go up to the top here. Sorry, I'm having trouble scrolling up here.
Have you ever asked it
Two
to give
fingers.
like 6 answers or 8 answers so that you can delete the ones that you don't think are as good and keep the others?
That's a good idea. I would recommend that. And, you know, I haven't done that, but if I don't like the questions, I just ask, like, give me more questions. So that's all I've done. So I'll say, what are some other questions? And normally they give some ones that I might use. But what you just said, I think that's a good idea to do. Okay, so after that, really, I just go through and find out which ones I think are good questions to kind of use on a quiz. And from there, you're getting into different multiple documents and transferring information. So this is a good question right here. And definitely as a teacher, I would read the article ahead of time. If you're not, you're going to find this difficult. So question number 2, how does Julia feel about her name being pronounced differently in America? The article is called Names, Nombres. Nombres means names in Spanish. And she's definitely embarrassed by it, but later accepts it. So which question is that? That's number 2. So I would check the answer key first. But I don't really need to check it because I know the answer. So, okay, let's go back up. Yeah, so C is the answer. She feels embarrassed, but later accepts it. So looking at these items, they look pretty good. So what I would do, four fingers,
That's right.
copy, and I hope this works. I haven't used Mac in a while. Okay, so I start out kind of old school and have a sort of preset quiz. And I think that's good just because if someone misses the class, sometimes they want a paper copy. So definitely inputting it there just helps me. But you could also go directly to quizzes and develop a quiz. Canvas, I think this semester started a new quiz function. So it's good to experiment with like this different type.
Could I interject just because at CETL, we ask people not to experiment with new quizzes.
It's got bugs.
It's got so many bugs in it. So that's not you. That's definitely on Canvas. They've been trying to promote that one for 6-7 years now. So they still haven't figured it out. So classic quizzes, if you could. So
Yeah, and that's,
you take your fate into your hand with new quizzes.
and yeah, I do the classic quizzes, but I think the format changed.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's still really easy to use. Like, in fact, I think it's a little easier.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that are great about it. It's just there's some back end stuff that will cause headaches later on down the road. So
Right. So obviously, actually inputting the quiz, if you're familiar with it, it's not, as I told Lane, rocket science. So I think this is actually reading quiz 1. And then just go to the questions and input a new question. Oh, this is actually the old one.
Mhm.
There's like a new one, which I think some people have, and it's like a little different. So creating the actual question, pretty easy, and then inputting the actual responses. So the one thing I would say is in terms of actually creating the quiz, the time I spend the most is actually doing what I'm doing right now. And so that's like the front end work of inputting the items into the actual quiz. So I think if we're talking about developing these quizzes as a teacher, I think that's a good conversation about like how effective is ChatGPT in creating these. And I think we have to monitor it and sort of use our best practices in terms of questions, creating items that are good.
Mark, we just had a couple questions online, both of them from Parisa. How difficult, the first one is, how difficult do you feel the other choices are in the multiple choice questions? Are there obvious incorrect answers? Or are they all potential options? Are they all like pretty good? It's like kind of like how well do you think it's building out the distractors versus the actual answer?
That's a good question. And like I said at the start, for my classes, this is a low stakes assessment. And as a teacher, I think we want to give our best quizzes. However, for my purposes, I do think you want one clear answer, but I think it's better that you make it kind of like simpler. So writing that college level quiz creates answers that are actually pretty difficult, where it would require some discussion with the students. But the actual distractors, based upon my experience of the reading, are pretty good. There's not really, I don't know if AI has a background in test item creation. There's some little tips and tricks, like make each one equal length. If you're going to start with the first one, make it smaller, and then B is bigger, C is a little bigger, things like that. It doesn't necessarily do that. The one thing I would say is sometimes it doesn't give correct answers. Like if, the answer key, I would definitely monitor that. That's where you have to go in and check it. But I would also say if the answers are, or the question or the answers are too difficult, I would kind of go on the side of easier, so simplify it. Because even I made a quiz last week and one of the good students said that was a really difficult quiz. And I looked at it and I was like, oh yeah, that was difficult. However, the one before was easier and there was more positive student response. One is easier, but also, there are low stakes assessments where you don't want to ruin their life taking this quiz. So I think that would be my answer to that.
And the other one, she had another one. Can you adjust the level of difficulty? Maybe you already kind of answered that if needed. That seems to be kind of what you're saying. Yeah.
Yes. So I only experimented with college level, but you could do that. I don't know. Has anyone done that here?
I've had students tell me that they've copied and pasted textbook chunks into it and then said, explain this to me like I'm a fifth grader to make it easier for them to comprehend.
Yeah.
Oh, cool. Yeah. Interesting.
So it does adjust that level of, yeah.
I have an add-on question. So once you've got the answers, is there a way that you can have it explain each of the answers and why the answers are correct or not? So in Canvas, it'll let you do this thing where if they answer wrong, it'll pop up and say what's wrong. And I'm just curious if that work takes a lot of time, but if ChatGPT would do it based on the text and say, well, this is commonly confused with this, but this is why the answer is right.
Yeah, I just asked the two for my.
I think we got to experiment with that. That requires.
We're going to have a time after you're done showing us, Mark, that we're going to open it up so you all can experiment. And Sarah, you didn't bring your computer.
I did.
You did? Okay, great. Make sure that we can all play around with that. And you can do that exactly. As Mark, are you going to? We had some really good comments online as well. I just want to make sure we highlighted them. Bardia, sorry if I mispronounced your name, just was mentioning that he has found that Claude AI is.
It does make more difficult.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So I just said, can you make a more difficult question?
Oh, yeah.
I don't want to do that. Can you make easier questions?
But you can adjust some of that. But Bardita was mentioning that he really likes Claude, so it's good to experiment with different tools, I think, as well. Like you're mentioning that these tools are getting better, and some are kind of doing better than others, or kind of maybe there's kind of a racehorse between them. Like they're sometimes, and so definitely looking at different tools, and then also that Rachel mentioned that she did some playing around with your texts and quizzes from the publisher. And actually liked what AI was making better than what the publisher was sending her. And on the flip side, Parisa was mentioning that students can put the questions into ChatGPT and maybe that, it'll get them the answer.
The one thing I'd say to that is the quizzes change a lot. So you're not going to get the same one. So they might not get the same quiz even if they tried it.
So if they,
yeah, that's what I did this quiz last week and then I wrote the same question this week and it produced different items. So it randomized it and kind of changed the words a little bit. But that's a good point. It's good to monitor what students, I honestly hope students are not attending this right now.
They all know.
Yeah, they probably all know. And I think there was something I heard in one of the CETL sessions was it's good to be transparent with your students, which I have not done yet. But that's like, oh, by the way, how do you say that? By the way, these quizzes I'm using AI. That's opening up a can of worms, but at the same time, it's transparent.
Yeah.
Do you think it's hard though when you don't allow your students to use AI and that you're using AI?
Yeah.
Like for my courses, I encourage it. And the transparency for me is easier because of that.
I think it's different depending on content. Like he knows the correct answer, whereas students don't. And so I think there's kind of what you're assessing or what you're looking at. So I could kind of see that there would be variations in how you might want to use AI in a class. And I think that's the way to be transparent. Like, I'm using AI, but I'm the instructor and like, this is how this works for this class. This is why I'm asking you not to use AI. So I think there's different ways to address that.
And being clear, like what you're doing as well, right? Like I'm not just copying and pasting, I'm
Right.
looking through this, like these are quizzes that are generated by AI, but I'm editing them, I'm
Right.
refining them, I'm curating them, I'm trying to make certain that, you know, that these are asking the best questions, but that way I can be more responsive to your needs in the classroom by spending the time building the quiz with AI versus just trying to do it myself.
Or I could teach them appropriate, inappropriate uses. Like I generally feel confident that this is appropriate because I'm not just copying and pasting the whole thing and putting it in. Like I'm looking at each item, which takes time, and seeing if the items are good or not good, good distractors, not good distractors. So it could show them good professional responsibility. I don't know, you know, it depends on how you're using it and how you're communicating that.
But I could also see you giving this same talk to your students and saying, this is what I'm doing and how I'm doing it. And if you want to quiz yourself, here's how you can use it, but you have to always go back to the book and make sure you've got the right answer.
Definitely.
I mean, it might pique their curiosity to get them learning more.
Yeah, and that's good, like getting students to do stuff in the class that, okay, maybe I'm doing it, but yeah, sure, you can do it. Test yourself. That's a good kind of activity for them to do. I'm not an expert. I think that's a good idea.
No, I just think it'd be interesting, but you have to give them the whole caveat of, it's not always gonna be right, and so you have
Yeah,
to. But I could even see at the, you know, right before a midterm or something, having students work in groups and generate questions with AI and then pull out the questions that they think are the best questions, and then maybe you pick a few that you put on the exam, you know, I mean.
And have a discussion of why those are good questions. Like, oh, what is this trying to do? Is it pulling out? Do we, you know, it's just a concept that we've been reviewing. Yeah, that's.
yeah, and that's, you know, this, we were just talking about the transparency, like these teacher secrets, like this is what I'm making, they don't know. That would be one way to open it up. That's an activity and we're doing it together. And that could create an interesting situation. I would have to check with my boss about whether I could do that, but I do think showing them appropriate, inappropriate uses, and also, like I said, in the teacher angle, that it's fun. So why can't our students have fun in that process? However, that's going to take class time, or it could create a quiz outside of class, bring it to class, give it to the class. That takes time to do that, but that would be more student centered.
Mark, do you think we could, do you have, I don't want to interrupt you, but do you think it'd be good to like, let's go and check out some of these tools and.
Yeah,
Play with it a little
definitely. I'm done.
Okay.
I mean, I think for the actual quiz creation, like there was like a new interface that I thought was interesting, but I think this is pretty, everyone might know this, but yeah, I'm done.
No, well, I didn't want to cut you off. I just was like, oh, it's wanted to give us a chance to play with that a little bit.
Yes,
So cool.
definitely.
Thank you, Mark. So for all of those of you online, please go to a AI tool of your choice, and same with you in the room, and create some questions. I have here on our experiment for today, use AI to create quiz questions from a course that you teach, you know, or something that you're familiar with. Have it create 10 multiple choice or 10 true and false. Maybe ask like Sarah to have you give some feedback. I saw somebody, I think it was Rachel online, was already saying that she got it to give some really great feedback on right and wrong answers. So test that out, see how those questions are, see if there's something that's useful for you, or if there's things that you can do to refine those questions, the prompt that you give it to get better questions, to get better answers. And then we'll come back and talk about that. So I'll give you 5 or 7 minutes to talk or to work on this amongst yourselves. Get some coffee if you're in the room. If you're on, you know, feel free to get some coffee if you're online as well.
Can we applaud Mark, because he did a great job.
Oh, yeah.
Not to do the wave.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Good warm up for my class. They might teach really well today. Elaine, I have a question. Is this the new quiz function?
That's the new quiz function.
So I went to the news quiz function. So I should go to the old one.
It's okay.
This is good to experiment.
It's good to experiment with, but beware.
There's pluses and minuses.
There's pluses and
Really
minuses.
tricky.
Did somebody have a question?
Yeah, my question is for like the Canvas experts, like the time consuming thing, I saw a couple of head nods, is getting the questions from your choice of AI onto Canvas.
Yeah.
Is there any format that Canvas would upload it
There is.
cleanly?
It's from Respondus 4 or something. There's a tool that will take it, but you have to get it in the right format. And by the time you've futzed around with getting in the right format in a Word document, saving that Word document and uploading it to Canvas, you could have had that quiz uploaded already.
But my thought is, isn't that all just AI anyways?
It
Like,
is.
can I connect that of like, here's my quiz, I need you to format it in this way
Yes.
so that I can.
That might be something that would be worth experimenting. That's a really good observation. So just like use AI, because AI is really good at that. Or maybe even seeing if you could get, if anybody of you using Claude, especially 3.5 Sonnet, it will do the paid version of Claude. I might actually do this. To like get it into what is that, like an API, or like what is there's a quiz format that Canvas will ingest. And so I wonder if we can get that. That's a great, that would be really cool.
And the other piece I wanted to add too is like, when you're doing these quizzes, this is something I've been doing for a year now. You do get those bad questions every now and then that sneak through even your eye of proofreading it. And I think it's really important to have a good capture system in place where like you're taking that feedback from the students of this was a hard quiz,
Oh, yeah.
this question, and like making sure that you're making yourself some notes to adjust those quizzes in the future. I'm sure different people have different philosophies of it, but like I'm always right on to the next thing.
Yeah.
I don't like working back and like cleaning something up that was a mistake, but I try to leave myself notes for next year to update that quiz or look into it at least.
And I was struck by two things Mark was saying. That's that one, that students were talking about those quizzes, where they're talking about the
Yeah.
ratings more. Like that was interesting to me as really in terms of getting students' engagement. And then there's another thing that just left me, but yeah, that was I really.
There's analytics you can find for that. It sounds like you
Yeah.
already know that. You can find the items that were difficult.
Right.
I found that last week, literally.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, I should know.
Oh, wow. There's so many great comments online. Thank you, everybody. There's just tons. I'm going to use those for lab notes if that's okay. I will pull out identifying markers. But I think you have there's some really good comments that I'm seeing in the chat in Zoom. So thank you all, those of you online. And I will definitely I'm going to pull out some of this for the lab notes so that everyone can see some of the stuff that's been going on. Yeah, that was a really good idea.
Yeah, I got one more too. My one thought is, for the people that really want to get into this, is I wonder if you could pit the AIs against each other. Make one, give it the reading, make it the quiz, but then take it to another AI and say, I made this, can you give me some feedback on this quiz I made about this reading?
Oh, yeah.
What do you think?
Because if you don't, the students will.
Right.
Yeah.
All right, this is
What are you getting?
changing. So I asked it to do applied questions, and then the second time I asked it to give me 6 answer choices and an explanation. And it's going through and explaining why each answer choice is correct or incorrect. It's amazing.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Oh, my goodness. And Leticia, I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name. Thanks for coming. I think, with the chat, what were you asking about, the prompt used? Could you just show it really quickly, Mark, the prompt that you used? Just kind of scroll up to where the prompt, is that what you're asking for? Leticia?
Thank you.
Welcome. All the way up to the top. I think it's really just like conversational, just like you're asking an intern, could you create a quiz for me? But here's, that's the prompt that he had.
Okay,
on the
gotcha.
screen.
Mm-hmm.
I found write was better than develop.
That's really,
I don't know why.
but that's really good of like, you have to be selective and specific in the prompt that you're using.
Right.
And also Susan Selitsky writes that she's been using Claude and chat to create questions that are specific to the reading and can't be easily found on AI or Google. And I think that's another thing as well, is that I've been finding that when I've been playing with this, that there are ways like you can, make it so it's not just regurgitation of facts, but you're having to like synthesize multiple aspects of a reading together. So you can create questions that are harder to just like find really quickly by word searching. And so Susan, I think that's a really good point of, being, mindful of how you're creating the questions. And look on the handout as well that I have some ideas that I've been finding that have worked really well. I'll let everyone keep on playing. If you're still fighting some stuff that you want to share, feel free.
You can make easy ones. I just write a simple quiz about the article, make the questions very specific.
Yeah.
Easy quiz, like scanning
Yeah.
stuff.
Well, and I just use the little bug that's in the bottom right corner of Microsoft Teams, the Copilot.
Oh, you're just using Copilot.
Yeah, and I didn't even put in my documents or anything. I just asked about conflict concepts.
Is that integrated now through IT?
I don't know, it's on.
It is being increasingly
It's
integrated.
that-
I know it's supposed to
that
be.
little thing that's
David's the one that
free
should be answering this question.
bottom corner,
I
but it might
remember
just.
A year ago,
It's
David showed
on-
Copilot making a PowerPoint, and I've been after that ever since.
Oh, yeah.
I might not have it because it's a Mac.
Oh,
I, Kim writes that, I was asking a question, do we need to disclose to our students that we as the instructors, we were talking about this, are using AI? And I think I would always lean on the side of, especially if they ask, yes, I'm not sure if we need to disclose, but I would lean towards that just to be transparent. But again, emphasizing, like I try to do on lab notes, like this is what I did, this is how I used AI, this is what I did with it afterwards. I curated, I refined, I revised it, I heavily edited it. So I think I try to be I always try to be transparent on this. And if I didn't get a question online, because you had some really good comments in here, then feel free to ask it again.
I'm so bad at math.
It's okay.
Just click this
You're
little
gonna- you
icon
can
and it
come
copies
join
the
our
whole thing
side.
and put it in a Word document.
Do you just ask it or do you upload files to ask it to read it or something?
Yes. I can show you that.
I mean, I know how to do that.
Oh, but
I was just wondering, is that how the quizzes are created? Is it you're just asking or?
well, Mark you seem to it knew the book, names hombres, so you didn't have to do anything.
Yeah, but sorry, I don't know your name.
Oh, I'm Claire.
Claire, sometimes I would just say that it will know it, but sometimes things are inaccurate, the questions. So it might be looking at different versions of the text.
Yeah.
And one of the questions here, they asked, why did her family come to the United States? And it gave an answer to escape persecution, but that was not in the article.
Sure.
So maybe a different previous version said, oh, we escaped from this situation to come to the US. And so I checked the article, which is a 2-page article, and it didn't have it. So it's like, where did that come from?
And I've found as well that it will take, so I'll upload a chapter from an online history textbook. I'll ask it to make questions off of that. And it will, as I kind of go through and analyze the questions, it will ask questions that aren't found in that text, but are found within the articles that it references. So I will upload chapter 16 of a textbook from an online text. I will have it go through and make questions. It will look through the sources. It will find, in this example, it was Andrew Carnegie's Wealth of Nations from 1889. And so it made questions off of that Wealth of Nations book or pamphlet that Carnegie wrote, even though the students hadn't read that. So it was it's kind of going through multiple layers of the source that it's finding. So it will create questions that are oh, it's good, but it's not off of what the students read. So you have to be mindful of is this actually in the text? And I always make sure everything is in the text, that it's clear, that it's accurate, because sometimes it'll get into fuzzy areas that aren't quite right.
It wrote beautiful essay questions too.
Yes,
But can it grade your essays?
this is the ethics part of it, yeah. So, oh, I see something online. Do you give students multiple tries on a quiz?
Yes.
Can you just talk about that?
Yes. Well, I should say sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. If I feel like it's an easy quiz, then just one try. But I think it is good, since it's low stakes, to give them multiple tries because you're increasing engagement. And so that's actually a good point. I actually think that they should get multiple tries, unless it's some sort of high stakes quiz. But like I said, I would advocate more low stakes, especially when developing these. And if you're making too many questions, you're going to be grading a lot. So for me, quick and easy. So I think that's up to the teacher. But I would say yes for our student population that they should get a second chance.
I see another comment and then I'll, Leticia, I see your hand. Just give me 1 second. Rachel writes, or actually, it was Susan, was writing about, she's calls it learning by quizzing, where she's having, even if the students are looking up the answer, they're having to engage with that content anyway. So which is again, a benefit. And I'm just looking at Rachel's, yes, yep. And using quizzing as a learning tool. These are great comments. Leticia, please feel free to join in.
Hi, thank you. Yeah, I just want to kind of share my personal experience. So this semester I'm taking over a course in nursing. And then when I took over the course, the previous instructors, they gave students 2 times, 2 attempts to take quizzes. And they are able to see their answers and kind of, so I just want to kind of follow up with, Parisa, because um, I was just observing, like, oh, should I just keep the 2 attempts or not? Should I time the quizzes or not? So in my situation specifically, students are supposed to take the quiz prior to our class as a form of preparation and like reading their textbooks and, taking the quizzes. Then in that case, I do the 2 attempts, and I think it's working because the students can go back and kind of like, learning from, if they had some mistakes, they can kind of redo it. And it's like has the guest speaker just mentioned about like if it's a low stake type of quiz versus, a higher one. So in this case, for my pre-class quizzes, I have the 2 attempts.
It's great. And I think that's a wonderful observation as well of just, reinforcing what Susan was saying of learning through quizzing, using that tool to like help prepare students for that day that they're going to be coming to class talking about that text. So that's really good. Thank you so much for sharing with us. Really appreciate that. Anybody else? Anybody else find something online, or anybody finding anything here when they've been playing with the tool?
I just have one suggestion about like you're leaving yourself breadcrumbs for future semesters. I don't remember who taught me this at one symposium someday, but putting like unpublished pages right in your Canvas module, like after that quiz, that's where I would leave notes to future Anne of like, oh, this quiz, so then you don't have to fix it right then and it'll copy forward and then old version of yourself is there for you.
That's way less friction than mine. I have like, each class has its own
Yeah.
OneDrive folder, and each week has its own like template of like how I run the class that week.
Yeah.
But that's way less barriers.
I could share. I did this. I've been experimenting with this.
You wanna-
Yeah, if you don't.
This is-
No, I don't mind.
Sorry,
No.
I get out of my, I've just been doing what you're doing.
Oh yeah, I know.
I'm having so much fun.
It's fine.
I get into it, so,
So, Lane,
how do you get out?
Canvas gives us some analytics on how the students do on the quizzes, and
Yeah.
that can be helpful too.
Yeah.
I think there's,
I think about,
I don't know if you wanna link to, I think there's probably an ed tech talk on that.
Yes, I'll put that in the
With the-
notes. The Canvas analytics, see how students are doing.
Bossy.
The Canvas.
Like, here's some more work for you.
No, that's great. That was actually, it reminds me about saving time. Because Brian asked like, oh, are you actually saving time by doing this? And I was like thinking to myself, like, no, I'm not, because often what I will do is like, I just won't do those quizzes because I just like, oh, it's just going to take me forever to do. But this is kind of like got me going. Where like, I'm just going to do these and they'll be much better than if I would have just tried to like slam them through at midnight when I would have got to it. And so I think this is like, it's not going to save me a lot of time because I wouldn't have done it. But instead, what it'll do is give me a lot more data to use for analytics or just help the students engage with that content better. I'm going to show you very briefly, excuse my swiping.
you can get out of all that stuff.
Oh yeah, okay. Let's see, more over. Okay, so what I did is I used Claude for mine. It wasn't able to pull out a website and search off of that. So what I did then is I copied and pasted from the textbook into Claude. And what Claude does is it does this cool little it'll just kind of put things over on the right-hand side. Here's my question that I asked it. The prompt I had is hello, I'm writing a low stakes quiz for my students in a 100 level online history course. Please review the text pasted below and write 10 multiple choice questions and 10 true or false questions that I could edit through about this text that I could ask on the quiz. And then here I copied and pasted the entire text. And the questions I found here, and I have this all documented on the handout. The link on there is exactly what I did. And then I have the results of what it was giving me. But I'm just going to walk you through just very briefly what I was finding. So I pasted in the entire text, and then it gave me the questions. And I kind of felt like the questions I was getting they were simple. And I was kind of thinking, well, again, we've had such a really nice conversation about maybe this is a chance for them to engage with the content. So it doesn't really even matter if they're looking it up, because now they've had to at least look up the main points that I wanted them to think about. So it's learning through quizzing. But I was thinking, how do I help prevent cheating? And how do I keep it from just like a regurgitation of facts? But I want them to think about how maybe populism and socialism in 19th century America, interacted. And so I said, okay, I had another follow-up prompt. These questions are a good start, but let's focus more on helping students identify the big themes and topics from the period, and less on simply identifying the names of individuals or riots. Would you please revise the questions above or submit alternatives? And so it submitted alternatives. And I think by my kind of following up and asking more specifically what I wanted out of the quiz, what's the goal of the quiz? And I think if we kind of think about that and help and talk to it about what our goal of that quiz is, it was giving me much better questions as a result. And indeed, it was also kind of going from a broader set of topics in that chapter. So it gave me a broader breadth of what was being covered in chapter 16 of this textbook versus the first attempt that I had, which was very generic. So I think it's just being specific. And if you're asking generic questions, if you're asking generic prompts, you're going to get generic questions. Is kind of what I was finding. But I had some of my ideas and tips that I had from talking with Mark, and just kind of what I've been finding as I've been experimenting with this as well. So definitely check that out. Anything else on this? I wanted to follow anything else on questions, on quizzing. Mark, any final words? We have 5 minutes. I had one more thing I wanted to share.
No, I mean, I am just like everyone else here. I just, creating more quizzes. I mean, in terms of quiz creation, I wouldn't lose what you know about teaching or assessment design, that if you're creating test items, you have to be aware of, I'm focused on reading skills, what are they understanding in the reading, but it could be content knowledge, what was the revolution that took place in Afghanistan, blah, blah, blah. They could know that based upon not doing the reading. So I would say be careful of questions that aren't text specific. That would be something I look out for. However, for low stakes, if it's not high stakes, this is not like the SAT, so even if it is assessing general knowledge, I would say it's a good question because it engages them in the content. So I think for me, I've just had more fun doing it, and reducing the time, I find when I'm having fun, that's good, it takes me an hour, but I have fun doing it, so.
Did you ever copy and paste the quiz question on back to ChatGPT and then see whether it gives the correct answer?
No, but I would do that. Yeah, I haven't done that before. I just use what I know because I think we're the authority for our class, but I think that's a good idea. I think we should try that.
I had one more thing that I wanted to talk about. What Apple has just come out with, you want to check this out if you have an iOS device, you can see it on the back. But Apple has been integrating AI through AI intelligence into iOS devices. Now, you get full AI suite if you're using newer devices, so a new iPad or a new iPhone. But even older ones, they're baking AI into it. And so one of the cool things that they're doing, and this is what happens when you do a live demonstration. It freezes. But what it will do is it will allow you, and for those of you here, you can see it. If you aren't, you're gonna have, I'm sorry. What you can do is you can sketch out like equations into the math formula. And so like, okay, here's a right triangle and I want to find the length of the long side of it. So I know the equation. And so I just put it in there and it will finish it out for me. So if you're doing anything with math or science and you're using equations, you can draw them out. And instead of having to like do in the top of your head, oh, what's the square root of 6? It will just figure that out for you. And you can, as you're drawing, and it just automatically puts it in and it looks like writing. And so if you're looking here and I can, you really can't see it online for some reason, it just, that screen froze. But it will do the equations. It will also do, longer equations. It will do conversions. So like, oh, hey, let's do 37. What's 32 centimeters plus 12 inches? And it'll say, oh, that's 62.48 centimeters. And then, oh, I want you to convert centimeters into inches. And I just, so 62 centimeters equals 24.59 inches. And what's the, if I want to do a conversion, so 5 pounds equals what? Oh, that's $6.64. And it'll do it off of Yahoo Finance. So it's pulling out recent data to give you the exact, currency exchange rate. So you can add, oh, what's 5 pounds plus $6? And it'll give you the result. So anything you're doing with math or finance, you can draw that out in the new calculator app or the notes app. And it doesn't matter what iOS device, as long as it's running iOS 18, it will do this. And this is all AI being baked in to the tool because it's AI that's figuring out what you are drawing. So this is something that I'm sorry for those of you who are not able to see it online, but definitely check out this handout that has the information right there.